If you actually want AI to help with your Power BI reports, this is the one setup you need to make it safe, and it only takes like 10 minutes. The thing that holds most people back when they want to work with AI in their Power BI reports is that they're a little worried that it could do something that they don't trust or that they don't understand. And so this is one of the reasons why I want people to move to a code forward understanding of what they're doing in Power BI. And that's why in that last video, we converted our Power BI report into a Power BI project so you yourself can see that code. But also what it allows us to do is that we can now see changes in that code from one version to another. As we make changes in it, as a coworker makes changes in that code, or even as AI makes changes in our code base, we can see those changes over time. We can compare one version to another, and that's really instrumental in being able to interoperate as a team and also having AI on your team as a fellow Power BI developer. So what it can give us is the ability to roll back changes. We can see diffs, or basically differences between two versions of our code, and it'll even light up in green and red as we can see those differences. We'll see that in a little bit. And by the end of this video, we are going to have a setup where we can do all of those things. We're going to take a Power BI report, convert it into a Power BI project, and put that into a GitHub repository. And we're going to do a full lifecycle where we can make a change to a DAX measure and see how that change gets presented to us in green and red in a diff, and hopefully that'll make everything come to life a little better. So in order to do this, you're going to need three main things. The first thing you need is Visual Studio Code. VS Code is what is called an IDE, or an integrated development environment. There are others and people have their preferences. I'm not saying that this is the only one that will serve our purpose, but for right now, just do yourself a favor, get VS Code. It is free, open source, it's created by Microsoft. Most every major enterprise in the world trusts it and will make it available to the people who work there. We'll put a link in the description to where you can go download VS Code. You can also grab it from the Microsoft Store, or your enterprise may have a software portal that you can download this from, or you might also have to put in a ticket with IT to get this software. The next thing that you're going to want to get is a tool called Git. So Git is a source code management system, or an SCM. And you can get Git at git-scm.com. You'll notice it's spelled with an I. And so this is a protocol and a tool set that will allow you to sync code between a remote repository and your local repository. So essentially, we have a remote repository, typically in the cloud, and we're going to sync code back and forth between that and our local repo. The other thing that Git will allow us to do is see those differences and light up in green and red any changes that we made between one version and the next. So you'll want to get Git installed. Again, we'll put a link to this website in the description, but also your enterprise might make this available in other means. And the third thing that you're going to need is an account on some SCM platform. There are several of them out there. I'll name three of them. The one that we're going to use today is called GitHub. It is free, widely available, and very well known. It's a very popular SCM tool. Another one is Microsoft's Azure DevOps, and there's a third very popular one by Atlassian called Bitbucket. If you've ever heard of Jira or Confluence, those are sister products also made by Atlassian, and they all interoperate very well. All three of those tools are predicated on the Git technology, so they're all going to operate very similarly. They're both fine products. Typically, your enterprise will make the decision for you in some regard which one of those tools that you're going to use. Today, just because it's free and openly available, we're going to use GitHub. So what you want to do is get an account. Either you can sign up through a local account, or your enterprise might make one available to you. Okay, so I have got a fresh VM, and we're going to set up Git and our whole environment from scratch. So the first thing I've done is I've gone ahead and installed VS Code. I've installed that Git protocol. I've signed up for my account with GitHub. And so now we're in Visual Studio Code. I've opened this for the first time, and I'm going to sign in to VS Code with my GitHub account. So we're going to click on Continue with GitHub. You'll see that it's opened up GitHub. I'm already signed in to GitHub with my account, and so I'm going to say Continue as the data practitioner, and we will say Authorize Visual Studio Code. And it's just going to say, do we want to go back over to VS Code? Yes, I do. So we will say Open. And we will, I'm going to go with with dark 2026. I like dark mode, so we're going to go with that. And yeah, plan I think is fine. We'll just go ahead and get started. And there we go. Okay, so I'm going to close out this chat window here and close out this welcome scene. I think we are good to go. Now, the first thing that I want to do is we're going to go to terminal and say new terminal, and we are going to type in two commands. So the first command that you want to type in is git config -- global user.name, and then type in your name. So I'm going to say the data practitioner in double quotes. So this is just simply telling Git what your name is. We will hit enter. And the next one is the same thing, but for your email address. So basically, we're just introducing ourselves to Git. We're going to say what our name is, what our email address is. So we're going to say git config -- global user.email, and then we'll type our email address in. Okay, so we've installed VS Code and Git, and we basically introduced ourselves to Git, who we are and what our email address is. So now what we want to do is create a repository in GitHub. You can have a bunch of repositories, and you'll see we actually have a list of our repositories over here. Of course, we don't have one yet, so we can say create repository, or if you have some, there would be a little new button. You can also click to the menu, click on all repositories, and there's a new repository button here, so we'll just click on that. We're going to give this repository a name, and so I'm going to call this sales demo. Now, one quick note is that Git is based on the Unix kernel. It was actually created by Linus Torvald, who created Linux, also based on the Unix kernel. And so consequently, there are a few eccentricities that you need to observe. One thing is these repo names really do not like spaces. So if I were to say sales demo, it would basically, it's not going to throw an error, it's just going to replace that with sales-demo. So rather, I will just simply do that myself, say sales-demo, and it will be just fine with that. So we are going to give this a description. You can set whether you want this to be a public or private repository. So private just means that it's only visible to you, or public means it's available to the entire world. There are absolutely reasons why you might want to make a repository public, but in case you don't know, we're just going to go with a private repository. I am going to add a README. Basically, going back to that whole Unix kernel thing, if that didn't make any sense, don't worry about it. But one of those eccentricities is folders, which a repository is basically just a folder. Folders in Unix don't like to not have anything in them. You kind of need to have a file inside of a folder for it to exist. And so people just sort of by convention stick a blank README file or nearly blank README file into that folder, and that will instantiate that. Sometimes you will see a file called .gitkeep, and again, it just simply exists for the purpose of instantiating and retaining an otherwise empty folder. We're not going to put a .gitignore file in here because when we convert our Power BI report into a Power BI project, it will actually create its own .gitignore, and we're also not going to add a license because this is just a Power BI report and a private repository for us. So we're going to say create repository. And I'm going to click this code drop down here, and this is the URL to our repository, and I'm going to copy this to my clipboard. I'm now going to go back to VS Code, and I'm going to go to my source control button over here on the left. I'm going to say clone repository, and you'll see the focus is up here on the left. And I'm going to paste in that URL. You see it's got the data practitioner salesdemo.git, and we will hit enter. It's going to ask us, where do we want to put this? Now, a quick note on where we want to put this repository. Again, where on our local machine do we want to put this repo? So one place I would recommend against storing this is in, say, like OneDrive, for example, or another synchronized location. Put this somewhere where it's not going to fight with something else that's trying to back it up. Someplace that's not monitored in that fashion. So I've actually got a folder on my root directory called projects, and I'm going to place the sales demo in here and select that as the repository. You'll see that it is cloning the repository, so that will just take a moment. And we can sign in with our browser and authorize our Git ecosystem. And again, it will ask us if we want to go back to VS Code, so we can just click over to VS Code, and I'll go ahead and open it in this window. And it's asking me, do I want to trust this? So yes, I'm going to say trust the authors of all the files in the sales demo, and yes, I trust these authors. I'm going to close this welcome screen again, and you'll see that we have our one README file in here. This .md file extension stands for Markdown. We're going to be dealing, not today, but in future videos, with a lot of Markdown. Markdown is actually a really useful tool. It's kind of like .txt files, but on steroids. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come over to Windows Explorer, and we're going to open up this sales demo folder. And you can see the same thing here in Windows Explorer that we see in our Explorer pane in Visual Studio Code. So what I can do is I can open up a sales demo report in Power BI Desktop, and this is just your traditional PBIX file. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this into that folder as a Power BI project. So we're going to click on File, Save As. We're going to navigate to that location. We're going to change the Save As type to a Power BI project and hit Save. So now when we come back over to Windows Explorer, you'll see all of these new files here. So we've got this salesdemo.pbip, folders for the report and the semantic model, and this .gitignore file. We already talked about these in the last video, and so we'll put a link in the description to that. Before we move on, I do want to show one of those files, and that is the .gitignore. One thing I want to call out is this second line in the .gitignore. What this is saying is it is telling the Git protocol, these are the files I want you to ignore. In other words, these are the files I don't want you to sync up to the global repository. The reason why we want to exclude specifically this cache.abf, in an import model, this is the local cache of your data. It is actually binary, so if you try to do a diff on this or look at the contents of the cache.abf, it's not really practical to look at it. It's not exactly easy, so it doesn't really have a lot of value for us storing that. GitHub is not exactly a data repository so much as it is a sort of metadata or schema or a code repository. So that's one reason, is that it doesn't add a lot of value and takes up a lot of space. But there's another reason, which is that the data contained in the cache.abf, while not exactly accessible, also isn't exactly secure. It's not necessarily encrypted. So you want to be very careful about what you do with that data. You might not want to put that in a repository where people can access that. If we come back over to our source control, you'll see that we have the number 44. That is telling us that there are 44 files that are uncommitted. So these could be new files. In fact, in our case, they are all new files. They might be updated or changed files, or it could even be deleted files as well. So we're going to come in here and give it a commit message. So this is basically some message that will inform what it is that we've changed since the last commit. So we're going to say instantiating repo, and you could give it whatever message you want. Typically these are pretty brief, a few words, a sentence or two, doesn't have to be too long. And we're just going to click on commit. You'll see here that this is asking me, would you like to stage technically staging and committing are two different things. You can stage without committing, but I'm just going to go ahead and say always. I tend to just always stage and commit, even though these are two separate things. So you'll see here that there actually is an initial commit. This is when we created the repo and put that readme.md file in here, and then this is our most recent commit here where we instantiated the repo. You'll see that there's a button now, an option to sync our changes. So if we come back to the repo and we can close this tab and refresh the browser, in our repo, the only thing that we see here is that readme.md, and that's because we haven't synced the file. So now if we come back and we sync these files, it'll say this action will pull and push. So yes, that's fine. So we're going to hit OK. It should just take a moment to refresh, and there it looks like we are done. So we can come back to GitHub in the browser and we can refresh this page, and we will see that now all of those files that we were looking at a moment ago are now in our code repository. Okay, so let's say that somebody has asked you to add a new measure. And so for us, we're going to imagine somebody has asked us to create a measure that calculates the total sales measure when the customer region is East region. All right, so here's what we're going to do. So we're going to come up to, in the top left, you see this main, and it's got this sort of branching symbol here. This tells us that we are on our main branch. And if we click this drop down, we can see under the branches tab, in fact, there is only one branch called main. And so what we can do is we can create a new branch. We just simply type in a name for that branch. Again, the branches cannot have spaces. So we're going to call this branch add total sales east, for example. You'll see that when I do that, there's an option here for create branch add total sales east from main. So we're going to click on that. And this essentially will create a duplicate of our main branch, and right now those two branches are completely in sync because we haven't changed anything to it. So now we're going to go back over to Visual Studio Code, and now in the bottom left is a button with a similar branching icon, and it says main. If I click on this, this will show me the branches that I have, and this origin, this is the term for the cloud repository, whereas main here, this is just on my local environment. You'll notice here that it has origin main. Again, that's the main branch in the cloud repository, and then I have the add total sales east in the cloud repository. So that's what I want to switch over to, is I want to switch over to that add total east branch. And now if we come over to Windows Explorer, everything looks the same because we haven't really changed anything yet. So what I want to do, I've gone ahead and closed Power BI Desktop, and so I want to reopen this Power BI project here in Power BI Desktop, and we're going to do that by double-clicking on this PBIP file. Okay, and so what I want to do is I want to create a new sales KPI, and we're going to right-click here and say New Measure, and we're going to call this Total Sales East. Calculate total sales where the customer region is. And so that's all I'm going to do for right now. Is just create the measure. Obviously you would probably want to display that measure somewhere, but this is enough for us. So what I'm going to do now is save this Power BI project. And so now if we come back over to Visual Studio Code and we come to our source control, we will see that there is one changed file, the sales.temdal file. So the sales.temdal file defines the sales table and everything that's in it, including the measures that are in the sales table. So if I click on the sales.temdal, it will show me all of the temdal, both what it used to look like as well as what it looks like now, and it will give me a side-by-side comparison or a diff between the two. Over here you can see visually at a reference where there are changes anywhere in this script, and unsurprisingly there basically is just one change because we just changed the one measure, and this green means that it has been added here in the newer version. Sometimes you might see red where something has been subtracted, for example, or something has simply been updated. You might see a combination of red and green, but for us this is just simply a new addition here. So we are defining a measure called total sales east. This is the DAX measure for it. The DAX definition for that measure is in the display folder KPIs. This is the format string, which is to say it's generic. Yeah, so we're going to go with this, and I'm just going to close this guy. We're going to add a commit message before we commit it. So we're going to say added total sales east. We will commit, and we will sync the changes. And I'm going to say OK and don't show again. And just like that, we've synced that up. We can come back to our browser, and we don't even have to refresh. We'll see that we just had a recent push 2 seconds ago, and we can compare and create a pull request. And so you'll see here what we're doing is we are pulling from this branch add total sales east into our main branch. We'll give us a title. We can add a description. We'll just say added DAX measure total sales east. You can add the DAX measure logic in here if you wanted to. You can be as verbose as you'd like. And I'm going to say create pull request. So this is checking for any potential merge conflicts, which in more complicated scenarios there might be, but we're good to go. So we're going to click on merge pull request and confirm the merge. Again, you can add as much detail and description here as you'd like. And basically our merge request is complete. So now if we click on code up here in the top left, this will actually take us back to our files, to our code, and we can actually open up the semantic model, definition, tables, and we can click on our sales.temdal, and we can click on history over here in the top right, and you can see 2 commits, first where we instantiated the repo a little while ago, and then this most recent one where we added our total sales east measure. We can click on that, and we can get again a diff of exactly what has changed. All right, so basically in a nutshell, that is the Git lifecycle. It can certainly get a bit more complicated, but the beauty of it is that there are bash or terminal commands that can be run. You don't have to run them. You can actually have AI run them for you. And so in the future, we're going to start using AI to do more of that work for us and just simplify our lives even more. So get subscribed so you won't miss any of that. And if you want to know more about Power BI projects and how that's all laid out, be sure to check out this video up here, and I'll see you next time.